This has been like some crazy story. People linked this to me and they wanted me to watch it, so I'm gonna go through it. It was really good journalism. Yeah, I mean, GamersNexus is like almost everybody respects them.
EK is imploding, and the quickest way they can prove us wrong is by paying the employees, the contractors, the suppliers, and the governments. Yes.
Well, that sounds like it's pretty hard to do. Because yeah, if they're doing things wrong and part of that wrong includes not giving people money, then yeah, it's probably not going to happen.
To whom they owe money. EK has a liquidity problem, one employee told us. All the money is tied up in stock. We just don't have the liquid funds to pay people out, even though we have the money, another said.
Oh, geez. What was the other company that tried to pull this shit? They said, like, oh, we can't pay you right now. Oh, God. I forgot even which one that was. All of them? Yeah, all of them. Yeah, what the fuck? Every bank?
A supplier to EK
FTX?
told us that EK
No, it's another
Waterblocks
one.
currently owes them 5 figures and is almost half a year overdue on payment.
That's a
Another
lot.
party told us that they have an invoice outstanding for services rendered that's been sitting for 4 to 5 months now, unpaid. My main problem is that they are clearly trying to hide how they operate and treat people. This is a problem, and as I said in my post, there's no place for this kind
A
of
5-month turnaround for getting paid for that is ridiculous.
treatment of people in the industry,
Yeah.
or any industry. They
That's
not
wrong.
only
I did.
have a liquidity issue, but they also have a morals and standards issue,
Okay, here we
in my
go.
opinion. Dan Henderson, the whistleblower who is willing to go on the record to bring
Damn.
this to light.
Holy shit.
Another employee told us that, quote, vendor relations were screwed by late bills causing our customers to wait forever for parts that would finish their orders. Inventory too often was almost completely wrong. That
It's like one of these situations where it's like nothing is going right, you know? Nobody's getting paid, the inventory is wrong, nobody has any money, the company's being... It's like, how did this happen?
was for the pre-built side of the business, which sounds awfully familiar.
Oh, and
no.
there's the re-roll.
We brought you this
Man.
investigative report with our new stainless steel, copper-plated mule mugs on store.gamersnexus.net. Our investigative journalism
Those
on
were the
sensitive
days.
topics like this bears greater risk and attracts legal attention. But it
Scuff
brings to light
Star-Lord.
issues within the industry that affect people beyond just the hardware. To support our commitment to no-nonsense, raw reporting on these important matters, please grab one of our brand new thermal conductivity mule mugs on the store. Some of you have been asking for us to bring this item back for years now, and it's finally here with a new finish and approach.
How big are
the
they?
mugs have a thermal conductivity formula laser etched into them, representing approximately the thermal conductivity of copper
Okay.
at 26.85
about what I expect.
degrees Celsius or so, depending on the thickness of the measurement conditions of the tools, and you know, this is getting carried away. But the point is, it's a fun and nerdy thermal conductivity representation, and it's a great option for cold drinks, which is perfect for EK's burns. They're in stock and shipping now, and we didn't even melt down EK's copper supply to make them. We wanted to verify what was meant by vendor relations being, quote, screwed. And so we contacted some of EK's larger industry partners, and one had a system on loan from EK. They had been waiting for a payment upwards of 6 figures for an agreement that was being finalized. And they told us this, quote, once they received their PCs back from a loan, we were ghosted and never spoken to again. And based on our investigative reporting today, we believe that EK Waterblocks is behaving in an irresponsible and negligent way in the way it's handling its money, its payments, its suppliers, and its own personnel, who are performing work, in some cases, unpaid for months at a time.
Jesus.
Additionally, EK is unnecessarily subjecting these parties to potential
It's like, I guess that, like, from my perspective, I would think that if I wasn't getting paid, I would stop going to work. Now, like, obviously, whenever you're in this situation and you're potentially being intimidated, it's probably way different. But it's always crazy to see how these people maintain that power dynamic.
financial hardship. When EK learned that we were starting to talk to their suppliers,
Negligence or
their
malice?
employees,
Probably both.
their contractors, and
This
their
sounds a lot
former
like both.
suppliers, employees, and contractors, the company panicked. It immediately, as we understand it, set forth to scramble to try and get payments out the door before we could put this piece together and finalize it. We'd assume so that they have the cover fire to say, no, they have been paid. It also sent out at least 2 legal letters, one of which was a cease and desist sent to a former staff member who began expressing desire to be paid for work which the staff member believed had been, until now, and we'll see in a few days, unpaid.
Right.
EK's cease and desist said the following, quote, "We demand that you immediately cease and desist and comply with the following. 1. Immediately delete and remove the disputed LinkedIn post attached in Exhibit B. 2. Tender payment of 70,000 euros by April 25th, which EK is entitled to receive as a contractual penalty for your..."
This, by the way, like, you can't use an NDA to prevent somebody from talking about a violation of the law. So, like, this is something that they just send to people to scare them. And it actually has, and like, also, I don't know if this is, I'm pretty sure this isn't really an American company, so it might be different, but at least here, that's the way it works. Thank God you can't, yeah. So, like, if they're not paying him and it's unlawful that they're not paying him, then he legally can break the NDA. It's intimidation. Yeah.
And eventually, 5, cease and desist from making defamatory statements about EK. Unfortunately for EK, the individual who initially posted the complaints is not the only one who has had complaints, and we've been able to dig up a lot of those. EK has a liquidity problem. It's making its suppliers and its staff members the ones to bear the burden of that liquidity problem. And in our search, we also found that EK presently owes and is delinquent on its franchise tax in the state of Texas, where it previously operated. It operated EK Cooling Solutions there, which was an EK US-based subsidiary to EK.
I don't know where the fuck that is.
Based in Slovenia. The company moved these operations to a different company in California, but they still owe taxes in Texas from what we can see in public record.
Okay.
They've kind of confirmed that too. The decision of EK to attempt to silence one source of this criticism, we think, is a smoking gun to greater problems. And for EK's lawyer,
I think you're right. It's like if they're trying to shut down and like pull rank with NDAs and shit like that, just because people want to get paid, it's like, what are the odds that that's the only point on the graph? Yeah, it's like somebody that's willing to do that is probably willing to do way more other stuff.
Who are inevitably watching this video, I have a message for you as well. We have everything, and we would encourage you to play nice and peacefully with the people to whom you owe money. Do the right thing and rectify the issues. Pay your people, apologize, and try to move forward to making the company that it should be and that it claims to
Imagine that.
rather than trying to go this path, because it may yet be recoverable, but that potential depends on the actions in the next few days. Here's the story. Following a public LinkedIn post from EK former contractor Dan Henderson,
he's right.
GamersNexus immediately began an investigation digging into some of the allegations. These included non-payment, among others.
Jesus.
And Henderson claimed that he went...
I feel like most people, like, I don't know about you guys that do like contract work, but I know that for like in entertainment here, usually it's like net 60 or net 90, which means like that you need to get paid within 60 days or within 90 days. Yeah, like, what are you guys at? Because I feel like 4 months for getting paid is fucking ridiculous. 3 months is also usual in science. Yeah, exactly. It's net 30 or 60. 90 days? Yeah, there's a few, like, big contracts I've had that have been 90. But, like, the majority are probably a lot less, yeah. That's crazy.
For months. Likewise, GamersNexus has received a number of communications from current business partners and former ones of EK and current and former employees and contractors. We've spent the last 2 days vetting these claims. We have, at the time of filming, at least 13 different parties that have commented to us and provided evidence. This includes business partners, contractors, and others. And we have screenshots, documents, PDFs, legal filings, inventory numbers, cost, and more. And so we've done that vetting, heard stories similar to identical to what Henderson posted from multiple other individuals, former and current. And so that's where we start with some facts and some claims for all of this. Dan Henderson posted the following on LinkedIn, quote, "I left EK almost a month ago now. The past year with EK Water Blocks has been one of the most stressful times in my career. From losing all leadership and effectively running U.S. operations by myself with no budget, what I could only describe as a skeleton crew, albeit full of amazing humans, and having all resources slowly taken away until the business can do nothing but fail, to not being paid for almost 4 months, strong-armed and bullied into signing a new contract through fear of losing my job, and also financial ruin. In our research, we mostly dug into...
I think that's what ends up happening, right? And that's how they keep people on the line and on the hook, is they just like constantly like promise you, okay, you have to do this new thing and then you're going to get paid. And it's like, okay, one more week or one more day. Oh, things are about to come through. And they keep you on the line for like 6 months or a year. Yeah, they keep moving the goalposts. Yeah, exactly.
The non-payment. And this is one where we can't give exact, precise amounts, dollar amounts, exact and precise timelines, because it would reveal our informants potentially. So we've intentionally obfuscated some of this information.
Yeah.
Just again to let EK's lawyers know you're wasting your time. Here's what we have. Multiple former employees claim that EK or its subsidiaries would shave overtime hours.
Oh, bro, I remember back in like 2010, Walmart got put on the spot for this. Like, yeah, this is actually super common. I don't know how common it is now, but yeah, it's very, very common. It's illegal. Yeah, no, this is super illegal.
Increasing the amount paid to personnel after
Is that
the
illegal?
work has
It's
been
super
performed.
illegal. Yeah.
This
Explain
is
shaving. Okay, so shaving is like, so we agreed that I would pay you $100, but I shave off $20 and then I pay you $80. You get it? It's pretty simple.
illegal if it's true. And
Yeah.
we've received this report from 4 former staff now. Multiple current staff state that EK has not paid them for up to 3 to 4 months. Multiple current and former staff have stated that EK fails to communicate when payments will arrive and instead operates in silence,
What a
making
surprise.
it difficult for them to plan purchases, living expenses, rent, or mortgage payments. The Secretary of State's office in the state of Texas informed GamersNexus on a call that EK Cooling Solutions currently has a tax forfeiture status. EK has laid off Texas-based...
You have to keep in mind that like a tax forfeiture status, like there was a payment that I needed to make to the IRS, and it was from like 2018, and I just semi-recently made that payment. So like if you're having that happen, you are like omega fucking up.
Staff and warehouse and moved some of those operations under a different company.
Yeah, it's had to be
After
escalated a
informing
lot.
Texas staff of the layoff date, EK allegedly continued to move that date closer. Employees eventually showed up to what we are told were locked doors, with EK moving the date in sooner. EK owes a supplier that we spoke with a 5-figure sum and is past due by 3 to 6 months. EK has informed a supplier that it may not be able to make lump sum payments for reasons we assume to be liquidity challenges.
You said Jay's 2 cents and Drosser are no longer working with EK. Yeah, I mean, I feel like nobody wants to work with a company that does this because, and this is really the problem, is that this is especially true whenever you're dealing with like an international company. Like, let's say you want to sue these guys. It's going to be really hard to do that. Like, it's going to be hard for you to actually get your money back. And the amount of time and effort and energy that's going to be put into that, you're probably not going to recoup that money. So that's why, for example, like this is the same thing that happened with Unity, is that a lot of people, like as soon as that trust is broken, people don't want to deal with it. Like the way that you have to make a decision for a business is way different than like, let's say, oh, let's give Blizzard another chance with Diablo 4 expansion. Maybe they figured it out, right? Because like, you know, with Diablo 4, you're out $70, and with this, you're out a 5-fucking-figure fee.
EK owed some employees back pay for unpaid raises that accumulated for nearly a year.
Yeah.
And we've been informed that EK is scrambling to issue payments to staff today pursuant to our investigation.
Of course.
Let's discuss how this happened. Everything EK makes is expensive. If you check their web store right now, they have 230 water block SKUs, 40 SKUs of kits, 85 reservoir models, 40 pump SKUs, 73
Oh my
radiator
God.
options, and 212 miscellaneous accessory options. Many of these are expensive. We learned that one major retailer has only sold 2 units in 6 months of EK's Z790 Maximus block. Because EK's inventory is so specialized, it ends up in warehouses. It takes a ton of space. EK's own, but also those of its distributors and its retailers. It ends up stuck with products because it needs to ensure compatibility with specific video card SKUs down to the board partner model in many instances.
Sure.
And that's a hard thing to accommodate at any kind of scale. But EK now is stuck in what appears to be a purchasing death loop. EK, we're told, in order to stay cash flow positive, needs to continually order product which it is having difficulty selling. It requires minimum order quantities beyond what EK might immediately be able to sell. However, if they want them at all, they have to hit the MOQs, or the minimum order quantities. This causes EK to get stuck in a cycle. It has to order because it needs inventory to make money to keep up with dues. But if it orders, it has to over-order. It has too much inventory. All of its money is tied up in inventory, and that cycle seems to repeat. And that means that it doesn't have the liquidity it needs, apparently, to pay something as small as a 5-figure invoice. When you're talking business to business and a company that has...
If you can't pay out $50,000 or $60,000, and like the odds are this could also be $15,000, and you're a business, you've got some big fucking problems. Yeah, that is crazy.
Millions of dollars in inventory of product.
Bad cash management,
a
yeah.
5-figure amount is not very much, and that is concerning. That's ignoring the staff wages, which are indisputably much lower. And one of EK's major retailers told us that its revenue total for EK through that retailer had fallen at 32% in 1 year. And likewise, its individual item sales dropped by 20 to 25% when looking at unit count. Unfortunately for EK, though, despite it being established for so long, our understanding...
Which makes sense. I mean, they're selling shit that's so ridiculously fucking expensive in a time where people don't have money to spend $700 on a water cooling unit. I mean, guys, let's be fucking honest here. That's crazy.
Is that it does not own all of its manufacturing facilities, and it instead is still outsourcing manufacturing to other companies. And that means it has to play by the rules of those.
Yeah, I think that what's happening here is that it's mismanagement, and then it is fraud and criminal charges or criminal activity in order to make up for the mismanagement. That's what I think is happening here.
Including hitting MOQ, whereas many of its competitors do have their own equipment, and as a result, they're able to spin it up for lower production runs, which means less cost in product that is not moving. Inventory isn't the only reason that EK has financial problems. The company also has a culture of financial mismanagement that seems to operate at a higher level. The model is unsustainable, and that's why EK created its fluid gaming PCs and its workstation systems previously. These were supposed to help EK stabilize in cash flow by offering something outside of just selling individual components for open loop liquid cooling. EK Cooling Solutions would generate profits in the US, and then EK headquarters continued to operate in Slovenia. And it would draw those profits, as we understand it, to pay down its own projects and to attempt expansion at the headquarters level. On the surface of things, this sounds fairly normal for how two companies might operate when one is a subsidiary of the other. However, the cycle stymied growth in the US office, and as a result, it was left with little budget which it could use to try and expand. The problem here is that in speaking with teams across the company, we observed a situation of open hostility between the two branches of EK. This is beyond a friendly competition. They are borderline actively hating each other. The U.S.
This happened with Artesian builds too. I remember this is like also a component with that.
Office viewed the HQ office in Slovenia
exactly.
as untrusting and overbearing, referring to members of HQ
East versus West,
as
exactly.
slimy, while the headquarters office viewed the U.S. office as incompetent. One employee told us that headquarters referred to the U.S. office as, quote, lazy idiots.
Right.
This is not productive, and it will never be possible for a company in this position to right itself while it entertains and enables and allows such behavior internally. That has to be addressed.
Well, it's like, if they're incompetent, aren't you also incompetent for working with them? Like, because, like, they're stupid, but aren't you stupid because you're on the same team and you're working? Like, I don't know. I feel like this is, it's a kind of a bad way to look at things. Not paying them is, yeah, I think that not paying them is probably why they're lazy. Yeah, I think so too. That's a good point.
Levels that are beyond the finances.
Yeah.
It requires a paradigm shift. People from both branches in discussion with him accused the other branch of stealing from EK. We don't know who or if any of them are correct in that. The fact that they both accuse the other branch of theft, though, is concerning within the same company. One former staff member with whom we spoke said, quote, SwiftTech in California was given the responsibilities of producing the products of EK Fluidworks and eventually EK Fluid Gaming. This is removing them from EK's own cooling solutions. The individual continued and said, March 1st, management stood at the door saying high-value items were reported missing, so you will be escorted to your desk to grab any belongings left behind, and law enforcement may be required to search your homes for said missing items. We were able to find one other individual who verified similar statements. The individual said this.
So they didn't have a reason? Okay, so they wanted to send everybody home or like temporary postpone work. So they cooked up some bullshit and they told the employees they stole everything?
This never actually happened. They loved threatening us. The former employee continued and said it was EK Slovenians versus EK Americans and their mole, the office manager. You never knew who to trust with a small group of management in between it all.
Oh my God.
Another EK US employee said this, quote, every time we made a sale, a member of the finance team in HQ Slovenia would go into the EKCS branch in the US and take profit from that sale. We had no budget as a result, but we were blamed for not hitting targets, end quote.
It's like at this point, this is so stupid. Like it's just so dumb. What are you doing? It's like I'm not even mad anymore. It's just ridiculous. I almost don't believe it. Yeah, I know this is insane. Are kids running the company?
Said EKHQ suspected everyone under them of stealing when we always suspected them of doing it. Yet another US-based former employee told us this, quote, HQ also liked to have us pay for work things up front out of our own pocket, claiming that we would be reimbursed. However, that rarely happened. I only know
wow, who could have expected that?
Of one time I was actually reimbursed, and I had to bring it up every day for a month.
It was probably a small amount, too.
Also tried claiming it was already done and that I needed to trust them.
Of course.
It wasn't taken care of. I then had my job threatened multiple times.
Naturally.
The two branches would fight over inventory, with the team responsible for building the pre-built gaming PCs telling us that they would often have to buy EK's own components from different suppliers because purchasing from EK HQ directly would sometimes mean retail prices to EKCS, and in order to hit targets and hit profit margin expectations, they needed to get those parts cheaper.
No, I want to listen to that again.
The two branches would fight over inventory, with the team responsible for building the pre-built gaming PCs telling us that they would often have to buy EK's own components from different suppliers because purchasing from EK HQ directly would sometimes mean retail prices to EKCS, and in order to hit targets and hit profit margin expectations, they needed to get those parts cheaper, and they told us they would instead buy them from other partners within the channel. Now, this in combination with
they buy their own. Oh, the reason why they're doing it is they're buying their own components to meet mandatory like inventory requirements and cash flow requirements. So they're effectively faking business by making the other branch buy the products instead of actually selling it directly to them. Isn't that fraud? I guess we'll find out.
With some of the other commentary on money movement.
It's got to be illegal? Yeah, so if you want to find out if things are illegal, the best way is like think about what guys did in like the 1800s. And all of these things, we've already figured this shit out. Like it's like, well, you're just buying, you're buying stock and then they just keep printing more stock. And so you can never buy enough stock. Like, we figured this out a long time ago, right? There's already a rule against this. And yeah, the odds are there's probably like 10 rules against this.
And the lack of payment meant we consulted with an attorney. And the attorney told us that a company might do this as a tactic or a common tactic to reduce the taxable profits in one entity by extracting them as cost to that entity and expense, in other words, from the purchasing of higher cost goods, moving that money, the profit, into the other entity, which is taxed by a different code and a different region, or where they might have different debts and expenses with which they can mark those profits against to try and further reconcile and reduce taxable income. That's, again, something an attorney told us is a possible tactic depending on the region in which all of this is happening.
Bro, this is some kind of fucking... What's up, Adelie? This is some fucking human centipede shit. It is. It's so obviously exploiting. What are you doing?
There were disputes over
No, it
commission.
is.
We've seen some of the EK contracts with its own personnel, and they promised staff a commission.
Devs need to patch this. They do. It's ridiculous.
But then annexed those parts of the contract by claiming that they probably should be changed. There was some consideration offered in exchange for annexing those, but given the power position of EK and the precipitous or teetering position of potential staff members, where their option is refuse and be fired, or take the change and get less money, meaning reduced or no commission.
Yeah, because you've got to remember, again, a lot of these employees don't have any resources. So it's like, if they stop working, the chances of them getting their money back that they earned is like, let's say 50% or 20%. But if they don't work, then it's 0. And that's the shit they're playing in their mind. I think that's what's happening.
It does seem perhaps unfair in the way that EK may have navigated that situation. And again, we have documentation for all of that. But let's talk more about what's going on at EK and if it can change or rectify any of this. For EK's part, HQ's actions speak louder than its words. In February of 2024, just a few months ago, I received a message from our friend Leo of Kit Guru, which he's an excellent reviewer, and he asked if we'd heard of layoffs at EK. At the time, I hadn't. I said no. But he was onto something, because we've now more recently found that the company sacked its CEO around that time, it appears, sometime early this year or maybe late last year.
Oh, boy.
That was Matthias Kirch, who was put in place by founder and namesake Eddie Koenig. Now, the CEO was put in place to handle the finances and the business administration side of the business. From what we understand, that was not an aspect that Koenig wanted to handle. In February, Kirch was removed and Koenig assumed intermediary responsibilities of the business administration, from what we understand. And we're told that the major shakeup happened after the founder saw the state his company ended up in. The question is whether
that's probably why they were trying to do the cash flow, is they didn't want the people that actually own the company to find out that this was happening. So they tried to make all of the different balance sheets and everything look like they were normal. That's probably what was happening. That's probably also why they were changing the profits around, so they could just blame the NA branch and not basically get called out for this.
Late to correct
hide
course,
the red. Yeah,
the
basically.
Founder also appointed that CEO. So we have to question whether he's capable of identifying the deep cultural problems that appear to be present within the company, and that's outside of just the payment problems. In order to pay its dues, two sources familiar with EK's internal goings-on right now have told us that EK is considering selling one of its buildings. This could potentially be a leaseback situation or just an instant influx of cash to try and deal with some of the debts. Some of the suppliers we spoke with said that they are actually changing their terms of agreement with EK. And that means EK will have to move to a potentially cash method or an upfront method rather than
credit,
effectively a line of credit,
yeah.
Or at least a net 30, net 60.
Well, that's what happens, right? Is like usually, and like if people are doing business with you, a lot of times like they'll let you keep doing business, but yeah, they've got to get the money first. Absolutely, yeah. Upfront is brutal. Yeah, exactly.
it may have been previously. Likewise, from speaking with EK's staff, current and former, the company would need to immediately begin communicating what it expects in terms of when it can make payments to its partners and its staff. EK, if you're watching, instead of being pissed off, what I would suggest, just talking openly here, is you listen to them. Because every single person who currently works there with whom we spoke all voiced the same thing, which was, I would really like it if they'd tell me there's a delay and when it will end, rather than operating in silence. The companies...
I think that this really, do you guys agree with me whenever I'm saying that, I think that they're doing this to obscure the fact that they're mismanaging the company from the ownership? Because everything that I see here seems like that's the case. And the only other circumstance that I think it could make sense for is if they were trying to get loans or investment, but at least so far, there hasn't been any evidence of that.
Suppliers getting screwed, it's not great. But a company can probably soak an $80,000 debt if it's dealing on the order of millions of dollars in purchasing. Cost of doing business. They sucked. They didn't pay us. We'll learn from that and not make that mistake again. Individuals, though, who have no alternative source of income other than the company,
they have to.
That's where
they have to come to the table.
Should be taken extremely seriously, and communication is key for that.
Well, it's fucking illegal.
We've been told by multiple staff that the staff that is, are struggling with things like mortgage payments, rent, being able to plan their lives outside of work. And that is because of exceptionally late payments. And we are talking here on the scale of months. The common number I was hearing was 2 to 4 months for most of these individuals. EK, interestingly, just sent
and this is kind of like what happens also, I think, with a lot of these companies, is that the companies start doing badly, and then they manage the decline badly, which causes them to manage the further decline even worse, right? So it's like this vicious cycle of bad management leading to bad situations that are badly managed, with more bad management, badly managing bad situations that are caused by bad management, right? It's a snowball, right? And so it's like at the beginning, they're probably just trying to buy a little bit of extra product and, make sure that things are fine. And then after they run out of that cash on hand, then it's like, okay, well, we can't pay the employees quite as much. And then after that, it's like, well, we can shave off a little bit of the profit from this branch over to move over to here. And then before you know it, you've got to have 5 different things in a house of cards to keep up an illusion. And I think that's what's happening here. It's like taking a second mortgage out and refusing to get a job. Yeah. It's like you're basically, kicking the can down the road for it's like, oh, yeah, well, we'll deal with that problem in 3 months. And this was a year ago, and so you have 4 new problems.
Media invite to check out its booth.
Yeah,
Computex 2024.
Yeah, it's like gambling, right? You're trying to dig out of the hole by, if you just keep gambling, eventually you'll win. Eventually, we're going to have a turnaround, and everything's going to be okay.
And... maybe in a moment of complete unawareness, it is inviting the media to visit its extremely expensive, probably 6-figure cost booth at a trade show so that it can try to generate enough business and drum it up with business-to-business partners in the industry so it can then pay the people it owes money, if EK even pays the people who run Computex for the booth. And we have one of our...
This is exactly what I was talking about. That is a 100% desperation move. You see what I'm saying? I think that pretty much, in my mind, that's what I'm thinking. Right? They're thinking, okay, well, all we have to do is do this, and we can land a few sales, and then we can start, solving all the problems. Yeah, I'm going to hit big, exactly.
I've shared this in the past. There's actually 2. I've shared this in the past. I don't remember if I named EK in it, but I'm okay doing that now. But the one that I actually care about, and that still bothers me today, and that I still find gross, is years ago when we were visiting EK's booth at a trade show, and we covered their products. Basically, it was set up. All the stuff was on the table. We thought it was cool. We said, hey, let's make a news video. And we shot the product and talked about the news from EK. After that, the one of the EK representatives in the booth sort of nudged me and said, "How much?" And I said, "What?"
Yeah.
And he said, "How much? Like 2,000?" And I said, "No, we don't we don't charge to cover the booth. The way it works, my job is to talk about news and things that are cool on computer hardware. It is my job to go to the booth or go to the suite, as it was, and determine if I think it's interesting. We walk out all the time. If it sucks, if it's not interesting."
And you have to also keep in mind that, like, this is money that's being paid presumably under the table. So, like, for example, like, if I take a sponsor for a game, I have to disclose that I have the sponsor. But if he's only paying $2,000 under the table, well, then maybe they don't have to disclose that. That's the implication. And also, yeah, 2K, how insultingly low. Remember what I said before about, like, whenever you're doing business in something that, like, is, like, let's just be honest. Like, if you're doing business in something that's illegal, that, like, the moment that somebody does anything that's off the beaten path, the moment that they diverge from being completely transparent and totally forthcoming with everything, that you should immediately get the fuck out of the entire thing. There it is. Right there.
Sometimes we're polite about it. We say, "Yeah, we'll cover it later,"
Yep.
and then never do. And the reason we can do that is because we have the freedom to do it. Because we
Have you ever seen the donations politicians get? They'll fuck up the public for a few K. Yes, politicians are willing to sell out an entire constituency for less money than a 15-year-old for have more integrity not taking a phone sponsorship for. That's right. There are 15-year-old and 17-year-old, 21-year-old streamers that are not taking phone game sponsorships, and they have more integrity than politicians. That's crazy. Yes, it's the same thing here.
don't charge to cover a booth at a show. We sell advertising as pre-rolls. You're all familiar with it.
Of course.
This video is going to be a GN store ad, but in that same spot, we'll have an advertisement. That's an external different thing. What EK was asking was if they...
Do you have to deal with that in your business? I have never had anybody try to bribe me for anything ever. I have had people ask me for free things. Like, you know, I will... I like, basically, there's like two categories where it's like, sometimes if I have a contract with somebody or I'm doing something and I deliver 95% of the way, but there's like something that I don't do or something that's like a little bit off, and then they ask, well, like, hey, can you do this instead? Then, you know, like 99% of the time I'm like, yeah, for sure, right? Because, like, you know, you need to be made right, even, you know, if it's maybe a little bit more than what I was going to originally give you because you didn't get what I said I'd give you, right? Like, these things just happen all the time. But in general, no, I actually find this to be very uncommon. Yeah, like, I think most companies, it's actually quite rare that companies do this because it's too risky.
Give us $2,000, and this was asked after we shot the video. This wasn't like before. A deal like that, if it's going to happen at all, which we vehemently disagree with, paid coverage. It's different from ads. I think it's unacceptable, but it's a different story. If that kind of deal is going to be struck, it needs to happen in advance. Doing it on the side is very shady and very off-putting. And the
not to mention, it's literally illegal. Like, it's just illegal. Like, you can't do it.
Conversation stopped there. Here. So he had said,
a lot of people want bribes.
$2,000. I said, I explained we don't do that. He said, you have a donate button, right? And I again said, what? On the store at the bottom. You have a donate button. We'll donate money. And I made it extremely clear, absolutely not. Do not give us any money. 1, we're going to refund it. 2, fuck you. I said, no, that's making me uncomfortable. That's not how we operate.
That's so fucking weird, man. Jesus, that is so weird. Holy fuck.
And I found it very concerning.
Because, hey, here's another thing. Like, y'all got to keep this in mind. Whenever people give you money, they're not giving it to you because they like you. They're giving it to you because they're investing that money in having a relationship that now you owe them a favor. You don't want to take this is not free money. It's for control, yeah.
Clear I was serious. This isn't a joke. Explained why it mattered so much, and it seemed like a complete lack
And
of
also, like, keep in mind that if you engage in this, if they report you, like, there's always a nuclear option that they could say that they sponsored you and damage your credibility. And it is kind of like a mutually assured destruction there, but it's still there.
Understanding how that is unethical and how that's a breach of trust, and how now that I've been to that booth,
Trying to get beholden to
I
them?
have
Yeah.
to be concerned about if some slime ball goes to that booth and does accept cash
Exactly.
on the side that isn't disclosed, that I'm going to be implicated because I was also at that booth and I also worked with that company. That's what
And also, like, there's the other alternative to that too, is that if you talk about this, then other people that are doing something fine will also get accused of it. Like, this is corrosive in like 5 different ways.
explained to EK, and that's what pissed me off years ago. We made it clear to them. They changed our representative, and everything seemed to be okay after that. Seeing this news brings that back to me, and so that was our story with it. Now, I don't want that to overshadow the rest of this because, one, it's old news, and 2, we're just fine. And I have nothing to be other than offended. I have nothing really that was taken from me. I'm not someone who has provided work and had my hours adjusted after the work was rendered.
Well, it's also like, here's another big factor, and this is just the truth, is that Steve and GamersNexus, they don't have to worry about money. Like, they're good on money. They're fine. But, like, imagine if you're, like, a much smaller tech reviewer, or you're, like, a smaller channel, or you need the money, then you're in a totally different situation. And that's whenever people can get taken advantage of. And I think that's the problem. Yeah, it's harder to refuse. Like, for him, it's a lot easier for him to refuse that. And that's great. But also other people, it's going to be harder for them to resist it. Now, obviously they should, and there's never an excuse for not resisting it. However, you know, like, this is a unique situation. And it's important to keep that in mind. I take the 2K so fast, a lot of people would. And that's the problem. Because it's like, a lot of people on YouTube, you got to keep in mind that, like you guys remember the Twitch leak, right? Where, like, it showed, like, all of the streamers that made a bunch of money. Well, guess what? There's a lot of those people, like, that number went down really fast, didn't it? Like, it's not like, oh, well, it's like, you know, all these millions of people, thousands of people are making millions of dollars. No. Like, it's an extremely top-heavy business where the majority of the money goes to a very small amount of people. And so if you're not in that small amount, then, yeah, it's very saturated. Yeah.
Actually, I think it was 4 former staff claimed. So the scale of how it's affected us, I want to be very clear, much lower than who we're really concerned about, which is the other people affected in this story. And the fact that suppliers got hurt, that sucks.
Yeah,
but
it was just
it's
offensive
really
to
the
them.
individuals that matter here.
Yeah.
So back to the staff. EK has a consistent and patterned behavior from everything we've seen that we believe to be intentional. That's what I think. And it does not communicate payment delays. This would allow people to instead seek other employment. It also withheld promotional raise pay, from what we understand, until it was pressured by the person to whom that raise was promised, and they eventually had to be pressured to give back pay.
Oh my God.
Further, we've been told that EK is not timely in reimbursing trip expenses, if at all. And these are all heavy claims that paint a picture of insolvency or liquidity problems at best, or fraud at worst. And at this time, we have reason to believe that EK or its managers acted in a way in which someone there in a position of power appears to have been possibly shorting employees on overtime payment.
Well, there's very clearly there's a convergence here of mismanagement and malice. I think that both things are happening in this situation. I don't think that all of these fuck-ups are intentional, but I think some of them definitely are.
We had initially sought comments from EK only because we had seen Dan Henderson's post, and at that time, nothing else. Hadn't spoken to anyone.
Yeah.
There's only that post. And we sent this email to EK after we started talking to some people. Here's what we said. It's on the screen. It's basically, we had received enough supporting evidence of a potential cover-up. We had learned of their legal aggressions. And ironically, after we told them, you know what, we don't want to comment anymore because you fall under our policies that we follow for contact and outreach, where we believe you are going to try and mislead us and you are going to try and twist the story, EK. And that means we don't want any further commentary. We have enough. The actions speak loud enough. Even still, after we sent that message, EK sent one that maybe unintentionally confirmed some of our findings that we hadn't yet finalized, such as tax.
See, that's the mismanagement part.
Delinquency in Texas. Quote, "Hi, Steve. Rest assured that EK is not forcing any of our employees to keep quiet. Responding to your emails is their prerogative."
Feels like a... You know, like, yeah, by the way, we're not forcing anybody to... We're not forcing any employees, by the way. Yeah, we would never do that. Yeah, I just figured I'd bring that up.
Prerogative. I'd like to present Exhibit A, the cease and desist. But moving on, they said, quote, "However, we would like to emphasize once more that publicly commenting on bilateral matters does not benefit any party, and we, therefore, prefer to resolve dissents privately. Yes, we have some unpaid bills, but we're talking about a regular business operation where, unfortunately, some payments are postponed." Extremely strong gaslighting.
That's very unfortunate. It is. It's extremely unfortunate for them.
Here, by the way.
Yeah.
The comment continued and said, quote, "The company's top priority is paying our employees' salaries." They continued, "We have around 200 employees who support their families by..."
Man, I wonder what the second and third priorities are then. Probably integrity.
"By EK making regular payments. The company has always settled its debts and never intended not to pay some postponed bills. All outstanding bills will be dealt with, just like our taxes in the state of Texas. EK plans to remain in business and fully get back on its feet, hence the upcoming presence at Computex 2024 for the first time with our own booth. So apparently time to celebrate. And again, that expense in extremely poor taste right now, especially to start promoting. It continued. There are always two sides to the story. As for Daniel Henderson and his outreach on social media, we are sorry about his reaction. Some reasons for his vendetta are likely linked to previous management figures with whom we parted ways in February 2024. The new management distances itself from the practices of the past. And to that I say, then you apologize. EK apologizes. If the statement is, he had problems with our management, we fired the management after we got rid of him.
Well, there's also, I mean, like, I don't know, because, like, this isn't, as far as I know, a native English-speaking company and a person who's communicating who's a native English speaker. But, like, usually vendetta has a negative connotation. Like, you don't use the word vendetta whenever you're talking about a person generally, and not always, right? But generally, that's in the right.
That's still your problem.
Yeah.
Because the manager who worked for EK was the one who was creating the situation that's being described in the response from EK in this email. Insane, completely unacceptable, tone deaf. Continued, quote, "We do not want to comment further because we have not yet established all of the facts of the situation.
Then why...
Investigation's underway. However, Daniel's accusations do not reflect the entire story, and we really don't see how its public exposure can contribute to an amicable solution. Ultimately, any offense taken at us is solely between Daniel and EK." I hope this clears this up.
So they're basically saying, don't talk about this publicly.
Again, not mentioned here is the fact that around a dozen or so entities, we spoke with people and companies, are in positions that are likewise affected by some of the actions described herein. And we didn't even go over some of the other ones, but I do have documents for those two, and EK knows to what I am referring. It's not just two parties. That is a lie. It's more than EK and Daniel Henderson. If it's not a lie, it is profound ignorance. And evidence suggests that we believe there is a company culture, or at least a financial controller culture within the company, those who manage how the money is spent, to whom debts are paid, in what order. There is something there that from the top down in the guidance of how this company operates that suggests this is the way it is intended to operate. And our own experiences do kind of line up with some of this stuff. But we didn't have enough.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, I mean, I wouldn't report a story like this, but if like they went up to me and they wanted to bribe me for coverage, I would immediately assume they're scammers instantaneously without even a question.
To bring it really any further at that time. So it's not distant from Noah Katz asking his employees for investment for artesian builds. That was one of the things that happened when the doors were closing.
Yeah.
He asked his employees, the CEO of Artesian Builds, the company that rocketed to success, $20 million a year, asked his own staff to invest money in the company to try and save it from his own decisions.
I forgot about
EK, you're not better. That's what's happening here, because short of actually literally asking the staff and the suppliers for investment, EK is instead taking a loan. That's what's happening here. By not paying for months at a time, we'd assume EK is not calculating interest on these payments owed. It is effectively taking a loan. It's borrowing money that it doesn't have to try and fill or tide over between the payments it's receiving from its product sales or its deals, or whatever's going on.
It's literally Gambo logic.
That's what EK is doing.
Borrow more money, take more money to get all the rest of the money back.
Loaning the money are unsecured and probably without interest. And EK, this is bullshit, because the people we're talking to, first of all, it's not a small amount of people. And this is only the former staff and employees and whoever else I've happened to connect with in the last 36 hours. A lot of them are people I have never met. I've been able to cross-verify their stories with other people. I've been able to collect evidence. I've seen enough. And what gets me is, for whatever reason, I have heard stories from people I've never met, and EK actually employs these people or contracts them, or in some capacity is supposed to pay or have paid
Supposed to pay them.
And yet, for some reason, it seems that I feel more empathy for people telling me they can't afford their house, they have to move, they have kids and they have to move, and EK hasn't paid them. And that's totally unacceptable. It is beyond reproach. I don't think it should be recoverable if EK...
Yeah, I mean, their bad business decisions doesn't make them not responsible for paying for labor that they've already received. Like, that's just not how things work. Imagine if it is. Imagine if that's how things work. That would be awful.
EK doesn't immediately resolve this issue. And furthermore,
where's the
I
money?
would like to put this message out for anybody who did work at the Texas office, because I don't know Slovenian law. I know a little bit of how it works in the U.S. And my message for you all is collect your evidence of non-payment.
Yeah, in the U.S., this is super illegal.
Hours shaving, reducing overtime hours
Yeah.
after they were worked. It doesn't matter if they say they were approved or not. If you worked them and they shaved them, then you get money.
Yeah.
Like and the money you get is through the legal system at that point. So, I'm not a lawyer, but what I will say is that the Board of Labor takes that incredibly seriously in almost any state, even in right-to-work states. And
they do. And it was after, again, I think that Walmart was implicated in this, and there were a number of other companies. This happened like a little bit more than 10 years ago, where like this was a really big problem in the U.S. as well. Because like back then, it was extremely hard to find a job. Like I remember like I couldn't even get a job at Walmart. That's how bad it was. And so big surprise, if it's basically it's their market, they're able to treat employees worse. And so they were having people clock out and keep working, all kinds of stuff like that. And so the punishment for that now is like insanely fucking bad, to where like these companies are super proactive about making sure that you don't actually work off the clock. Because there was like a lot of rules that were added in, and like punishments were like massively increased for doing this. Like everybody was furious about it whenever it happened.
There may be something there, because if a
jail time
company
now? Yeah.
begins to explore retaliatory
I don't know if it's jail time, but
actions,
yeah.
such as a cease
lot
and
worse.
desist, there start to be multiplier effects on the potential damages. So someone in the comments who maybe is a lawyer can sound off on this.
Yeah.
I think there's instances where treble may apply, and in any
I feel like
case,
it'd have to be, right? I don't know.
If there has been a good faith effort on your end to get that money, and it has not been provided,
The good faith effort made by the company that's trying to bribe him to give coverage. Uh-huh.
I wouldn't shut up, just walk away.
Right.
I mean, there's options, but yeah, I was actually editing the video,
Yeah.
and I stopped, and I wrote a couple notes, but I had to run down here and film this segment because it went from I'm reporting the facts of the situation to now I'm thinking about what it means.
Yeah.
And the thinking about it part was the hard part, because to me it's how can you do that to people and then turn around with this two-faced bullshit about how much you care about the people you employ.
I think what happens is that the people just lie to themselves. They just lie to themselves, and they spend so much time talking about how they're making the right decision that they disconnect themselves from what that decision really is.
Contract, while also not paying them for months with, according to everyone we've spoken to, zero communication.
Yeah.
And some of the people I've spoken to, I feel like they're almost Stockholm syndromed into it. We're like, oh, they say they're gonna pay it eventually.
I think that I don't think it's Stockholm syndrome. I think what happened is that they have, like, let's say $4,000 tied up in EK salary, like on the back end, and they think that if they don't stay at the table, they'll never get that money. So, like, they're basically they're keeping them working for no money by holding the money that they're not giving them hostage. And it's like, it's easy to say, like, oh, well, then just leave. Yeah, that's fine. But, like, for a lot of people, that's a lot of money, and they can't really just do that. So, like, they're stuck. It's sunk cost fallacy, exactly.
And I hope they just reach out and let me know if there's going to be a delay. And, that's not, you got to break out of that. But EK.
Yeah, it's very hard to do.
The people who work for you have told me they just want to know if there's going to be a delay. That's easy. So fix it, and we'll see you at Computex. I'll be there. I'm going to I got the invite. You can't take it. No takesies backsies. We'll be at the booth.
Oh, boy.
Bright and early. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. There's going to be more. Subscribe to catch follow-ups, but we have normal reviews coming up soon. I'm excited about them. They will be overshadowed by this. This is important, though, and the reason it's important is, I mean, customers should know, but to me, more importantly, is the people who are affected should get their f***ing money from EK.
Well, I mean, this isn't really a cancel culture situation. They're literally breaking the law. Like, yeah, like, what are we talking about here? I mean, this isn't an internet witch hunt. This is just like they're breaking the law and scamming people. Like, what the fuck?
So that's it. Subscribe more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net if you want to support us. Unless you're EK, don't give me a dime. We talked about it. Otherwise, patreon.com/gamersnexus to help out. And we will have more independent reporting for you soon enough. See you all next time.
Oh my God. I didn't, because like I never looked into this or saw anything about this at all. Yeah, Pirate Software is requesting a refund for Helldivers 2. Yeah, I'll look at that in a minute. Yeah, there's the video. Make sure to give it a like. I mean, I had no idea this shit was this serious. I really didn't. W video, looking forward to the next one. Yeah. Well, like, what's so crazy about it is the fact that it seems like these guys, I feel like this is an instance of, I'll watch part 2 like probably tomorrow. I'm not going to watch it right now. Videos like this are so good for the culture because it makes people afraid to offer bribes. Well, it does. And also I think it lets people know that this behavior isn't normal and they have a recourse for it as well. So I think that both of those things are factors. The truth is that with a lot of these videos, it's not like it's one mistake. it's like more and more and more mistakes putting together. I got a rant? Okay. Yeah, it's like basically one mistake happens and that enables another mistake and that justifies another mistake, and then it's just more and more and more things.